Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of React Roundup. I am your host today, Paige Niedringhaus, and we are joined by our panelist, TJ Van Tol.
Hey, everybody.
And our special guest today is Jennifer Fu. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hi.
So, Jennifer, maybe you could tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, why you're famous, and what we're going to be talking about today on the podcast.
Oh, my name is Jennifer Fu. I'm a software engineer and specialize in front-end development. Actually, I have over 20 years working experience in enterprise software. I built a lot of softwares in the AI, machine learning, storage, security, and many areas. So I actually love React. I built a lot of React projects, and especially lately I'm working on the Web3 and the React 3.js. So today I'd like to talk about how great 3.js it is.
Well, that's fantastic.
Hey, folks, this is Charles Max Wood from Top End Devs. And lately I've been working on actually building out Top End Devs. If you're interested, you can go to topenddevs.com/podcast, and you can actually hear a little bit more about my story about why I'm doing what I'm doing with Top End Devs, why I changed it from devchat.tv to Top End Devs. But what I really want to get into is that I have decided that I'm going to build the platform that I always wished I had with devchat.tv, and I renamed it to Top End Devs because I want to give you the resources that are going to help you to build the career that you want, right? So whether you want to be an influencer in tech, whether you want to go and just max out your salary and then go live a lifestyle with your family, your friends, or just traveling the world or whatever, I want to give you the resources that are going to help you do that. We're going to have career and leadership resources in there, and we're going to be giving you content on a regular basis to help you level up and max out your career. So go check it out at topenddevs.com. If you sign up before my birthday, that's December 14th. If you sign up before my birthday, you can get 50% off the lifetime of your subscription. Once again, that's topenddevs.com.
So maybe one of the things that you could start off by telling our listeners is what Three.js is if they're not as familiar with it.
Okay. Three.js is a library. It's a 3D JavaScript library that render a 3D content on a web page. So it's not just a dot, a line. It's a 3D library picture. You see modeling. It's like an animated movie. It is created very easy to use across the browsers, 3D library. So you can use it. It's very easy to use. You just write a few lines code and everything, boom, working for you. It's just like see it in a movie.
Well, if I'm remembering correctly, Three.js is built on top of, it's WebGL under the hood, right? But
yes.
I think like the reason is WebGL is kind of rough to work with directly. So it's a library that makes it easier. Am I remembering that right?
Yes, correct. Like WebGL, you can join dot, line, and triangles. Then you have to use all these primitive elements to build a complex one. You have to write lots of code. And the 3.js put everything together. So you just write a few lines code, everything work underneath for you.
Very cool.
That's awesome. So how does Three.js work with React applications? Because I know that there's, some map related packages that don't play very well just right out of the box. So is there any kind of integration issues with React for Three.js?
Well, there are two ways to do it. You can use 3.js direct in React. So you just use React way, call 3.js and render it. Well, it works well, but you have to take care of a lot of things. Like, for example, you have to listen to resize event. When the browser resize, you have resize with it. You have to dispose the object, you not use it. It works well, but there's another alternative for you. It's called React 3 Fiber. That's a render built on top of the 3.js. It takes care of all this for you. So it's very convenient to use. And also you can write it in React way, use JSX, and it's so convenient for you.
That sounds awesome. We'll put it into the show notes for sure for anybody who's interested. So can you give us some examples of when you might want to use Three.js? Like, what is it really good for?
Or you want to show an image look like a real world. So you can have a modeling. So actually, one of my article talk about you can get any 3D model. It's a GLTF format. So you just import it. You can put there, you can change it, rotate it, and you see it's real. I think it's good to put in a website. You can show your website very up to date and also it's interesting, right? It can show more things. And I think one of the projects I worked use the network topology, use Three.js. It's build the connection. It looks very sleek. It's much better than you draw one line and connect them together.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I run across these sort of things in the wild decently often, and they're always like really cool. Like it's something that, especially for like your company's homepage or your product's homepage, like you really want something that catches people's eyes and attention. And when you see a really cool 3D visualization, like you can't look away, right? It's just like the human response is there's something moving on the page or spinning or animating. Your eyes are drawn to that. So if you have something about your product or whatever that you want people to focus on or see, something like this is a really, really cool option.
Yeah. And also on top of React 3 Fiber, there's another package called React 3.js, which is a help function and make things even simpler and cooler. Like you talk about animation, right? So usually you write animation, you think, wow, it's a big thing. It's very complicated. But in the React 3 Fiber or React 3.js, so now you just one command. You do the orbiting rotation. Your camera can rotate automatically or rotate by your mouse collection, or you can make the object to rotate, use frame, just one call, everything's there.
Yeah, I'm wondering, the one cool one that I actually don't know if this is Three.js, but GitHub.com's homepage is really, really cool. It's like this animated 3D globe that shows when commits are happening, like all around the world, and the globe spins. And like I said, I don't know if that's Three.js or WebGL. I'm actually not totally sure, but it's the sort of thing you can build with this sort of thing, and it's just really, really cool. I can't even look away right now. I'm just mesmerized by this thing.
It's actually from the CSS. You already can build a very cool animation, and the Three.js make it even easier and even more complicated animation.
So Jennifer, how did you get started with Three.js? Was it something that was just kind of interesting to you, or was it something that you actually got to use in a job or a production application?
Well, I had a project I used to use it for the network topology. And currently I'm writing for Medium for all the things I interested or the technology I use at work. And I also talk to Edit. So it's Anapan. He actually had a conversation with me, talk about what's the cool things. Then we actually talk about Three.js and say, hey, why not I just write it now? That's how we started.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a great reason to get into anything. And it's awesome that you can share and kind of give back and help other people who are interested in getting started with it.
Yeah, I like to teach people. Yeah.
So speaking of teaching, I've always thought this technology is cool, but it still feels very intimidating to me. Like it's Three.js is cool because it makes it easy. It's like, oh, I can build a circle and it's spinning and it's so cool. But the gap between that and like something that I would feel comfortable putting on like a company's website or, something important is quite a bit, right? Like, so one challenge I've had with it is going sort of beyond the basics. And I'm wondering, like, if you're building something like this at scale, like, do you reach out to designers that have experience building with these 3D models? Or because I feel like you're almost stepping into a whole new realm, right? Because like, I don't even know what like design assets would look like for something that's in 3 dimensions, because I've never done that before. So I'm wondering like what you've ran into, like once you get beyond simple examples, and like what processes you go through or any tips you might have.
Well, I think it's kind of like learning everything. You start from small, start from simple thing, right? So that's how, I have the article series. You follow the series, you can see the first one just started with README. It's nothing simpler than that, right? Then you go a little bit more. So right about, so you put a README to put in the Create a React app, and boom, it works. Then you add more. So, talk about 3D model. Before you design 3D model, you can get a free one, right? There's a website provide a lot of free ones. You take it and give the credit for the author, and you just used it. It's very, very cool. Then, you go to next. Okay, you write about, hey, how about the texture? You put a texture on the rotating one, right? So it's a cube. So you put on it. Then it works. Then, okay, so the next step, you can put on the environment to say, okay, you put the image over a surface, it works. Then how about the surrounding it? Environment, you imagine there's a cubicle there, and you put a different picture. Then you have a reflection or refraction, either way. So I think that the cool things is you build it a step by step. If you do it gradually build up, you don't feel it's difficult, right? Then you suddenly go back and say, hey, everything's so easy, so natural. And also, we have designer to work us all the time. Even I build things, I have opinion, but it's very specialized technology and knowledge things. So we have a designer to propose the things, and we give feedback and work together to make it a nice, sleek on the web page.
Yeah, this article, I've been skimming through what you have here as you were talking, and it's sort of fascinating. I really like this approach because you bring in a 3D model, and the 3D model is basically its own component, more or less, in React. But then you can work with like the Three.js primitives around that, right? Like you almost have like a 3D model that you could now control using React terminology, which feels way more approachable to me. Like I feel like, oh, well, I could do that. I sort of know what I'm doing. So I really like this approach.
Yeah. When I'm writing article, I think one thing to say, it's very approachable. And I think I get a feedback from my readers too. Yeah. It's very easy. Sometimes you look at title, wow, it's a big thing, right? You actually read the article, follow it. I think it's easy. It's not that difficult.
Yeah, and I imagine too, like when starting with the free models is a really good idea because, like you said, there are some out there. You can find one that you think is just fun and start toying with it. And I imagine too, I'm sure there's freelancers out there that if you need like a custom built 3D model, right? Like, okay, I've learned this and now I'm ready to deploy something. I'm sure there are people out there that you can hire and say like, I need a model now that's customized to my needs. Because I think that's a skill that most developers don't have. Like they're not going to go into, I mean, I don't even know what tools you use to design 3D models. But I imagine there are people you can reach out to for that sort of thing.
Yeah, usually when they give the free model, they also have the contact information. So you can talk to them and get them help you.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of Blender. If you've ever seen that, which is I think it's a tool for doing kind of 3D modeling as well on the web. And it's really cool looking because Josh Komu is the one that I'm thinking of who uses it for all of his his website, not animations necessarily, but just like images and things like that. And it kind of feels like the same thing. So they may both be using WebGL under the hood, just in different ways. But that I think is the kind of person that you might look to if you're wanting a very specific model. It's not just a cube or a circle or a sphere or something like that.
Yeah. So actually I did some drawing, right? If we use a hand to draw thing, it takes so long. There's so much effort to make it realistic. So I think, sometimes programming makes it a lot easy and you make it changing. Sometimes you just change some parameter. It's a very, very powerful and efficient way to draw images and modeling.
Cool. And we'll definitely have to put some links in the show notes and help people. So one question that I had, and TJ kind of led into it, is what do you think are some of the best resources for getting started with either React 3 Fiber or with Three.js? You mentioned a little bit the documentation. Is that still a good resource for people?
Yeah, I think that like a Three.js, they have a website. They have very nicely documented all the APIs. They also have cool examples. Sometimes I'm amazed by the example. It looks so real.
That's awesome. I'll have to check that out.
Are there any other tips that you have for people that are new to it? Like anything you've learned through the process, like places to go, things to experiment with, just any other tips in general?
I think I just say, try it. Don't afraid to make a mistake and try out something, it looks so difficult, but after you try it, and step by step, more, then go back and say, hey, it's not that difficult, right? So after you understand something, it's always becomes easy for you. And after all, programming is not that difficult. And the React makes things simple, and Three.js make it even simpler.
So how do you know when you need Three.js? Like what kind of either story might you pick up or a website feature that you might be working on where you're like, this is what I definitely need to reach for Three.js for?
Well, you want to have a topology, you want to show something in animation, or you want to show a cool process, right? Workflow or things. Then you need a Three.js.
Okay.
I think too, some interactivity. I think that what's cool about it is that that's what separates it. Because I mean, you can do a video where you show off anything in video format, but with the ability to make things sort of interactive or changeable, right? Like I can make it so I press a button and my model rotates or the lighting changes or whatever, which is you can't do with just a straight up video. So I feel like something that you don't want to just display a static model because that could just be an image or a whatever, right? So it's got some bit of interactivity in some way, I think is where it really stands out.
Yeah. I guess I've never personally worked on anything like that or had the need to use it, but I kind of want to try it out now.
Yeah, especially some landing page, you really catch the reader's eyes, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Paige, I'm already thinking of ideas. We need to start to pitch after this. Like we're going to need the next month to redesign the homepage.
Yeah, like I write for the Medium, right? The first, most of the things like a static heading image. Now I say, hey, the image you can do animated GIF, right? After create the Three.js, actually, I recorded and I made it the GIF. So, hey, it's nicer, right? It's more interactive, more interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Jennifer, I've been looking at your Medium articles list, and this is incredibly prolific. You have a lot of articles out there. So I'm actually curious, what got you into writing? Did you just want to share your experiences, or like I'm just curious because there's a lot here. It's quite impressive.
Yeah, I work, right? I currently work for Domino Data Lab. I do the work for them. I did part of design. We have designer, but I work with together. We discuss what to do, and I write a code and implement it. And well, I have problems, right? When I do the designer develop a code, you have issues. Then you go research and figure out what to do. Then I write notes. So it's a lot of things from my working experience. And from my notes, I say, hey, I can expand it some more and then let more people to read it. Isn't that cool? So that's how I do writing. Besides, actually, I like writing. I wrote stuff. I like teacher. I have been teacher for a short period of time. And I actually do some writing. I even wrote some novel in Chinese. But all this skill, right, can become together. Now I say, hey, I have this notes. I expanded these notes and make the articles. So I set a schedule for myself, try to do once a week. I try to discipline myself to learn and to share.
That is awesome. And that it, like TJ said, you have so many articles that would probably everybody would find useful. I mean, it looks like you've done everything from in-depth React articles to Three.js, as we were talking about, to some stuff about Java and Swagger and micro front ends and VS Code. I mean, there's a little bit of everything in here.
Yeah, I actually wrote a book about the Java interview a few years ago. Then I found out, wrote a book, it takes too long, right? Article, it's fast. You have some idea, the next week, it's already there to meet the readers.
I think that's awesome because I've discovered the same thing. Like I can't, if I have to write on a certain topic, I might take forever, procrastinate on it. But if it's something that comes up at work and it's like, oh, and you have that spark of inspiration, then I can write that up. If I do it fast, right? If I do it like later that day or the next day, like, man, I can write that up in no time at all. Whereas if I just arbitrarily pick a topic at random, like it goes way slower. My writing isn't as good. So it's really like has to come from some sort of like something that happens, right? Like you said, your work experience or something that you run into, because that gives you way more of like a drive to write these things, I feel like.
Yeah. So you said that you work for a company called Domino Data Lab. They do a lot of AI and machine learning. So can you give us kind of an idea of what you do in particular there?
Oh, so yeah, the company they do a platform for AI machine learning. So AI machine learning, you have a lot of algorithms, you do training or things. You need to store data. You need to be able to retrieve data and do the training, and you should be able to retrain the same data and sometime later. So it's complicated, right? You have managed so many things. And the Domino Data Lab just centralized everything together for you on the one platform. So everything is reachable just on the website. So I built this UI. So I work with a lot of talented UI engineers, and we architected the platform, how it works, and build all the components and make it work. We actually do a lot of great stuff. We build a UI common components. We build a storybook. We also use the Chromatic to make it, the Chromatic manage a storybook for you. So every time you always have a brand new one. So you also have the components. Maybe someday we can make it open source and share those components we build. That would be cool.
I'm curious, do you get to work with, like, do you have some of the problems with just huge data sources on the front end, or is that mostly handled by like back end processes that process that data?
Yeah, the engine is always a back end, right? So it's always a challenge. So how the UI do the lazy loading, for example, right? How do you partially show things, but give user the feeling you own everything, whole data? Yeah.
So I'm here with JD from Raygun. JD, why did you start Raygun?
I started Raygun. It was actually our 11th product that we built. So, if you're a fellow software engineer thinking you want to build something and build a business, this was the 11th try, right? And we built it because way back when I was writing more code for customers, I used to instrument my code to send an email to myself when something went wrong. And it would let me kind of get in front of the issue before the customer complained. And so we built a whole product called Raygun for crash reporting initially. It expanded out into other areas, but it was really just building a full solution to what I'd been doing years earlier to try and build better software.
I love that, just scratching your own itch. It makes a ton of sense. And I do that too with some of the stuff that I'm doing, either with podcasting or programming.
Yeah, absolutely. The most awkward thing was when we actually instrumented some of those prior 11 products, and that's when we realized that about 1% of users will ever actually report an issue. And you go, oh, we might have been a lot more successful earlier if we'd known that. So that's kind of the whole value prop of Raygun.
Yep, absolutely. And it makes sense just to put it in there. So folks, if you're looking to try something like this that'll tell you what your problems are, go check out raygun.com and get a free trial.
I could see that too, because it's funny. You probably have lots more experience than most people when it comes to like loading indicators and such, because Paige and I both have some limited experience with ML processes, and like sometimes those can take a while, like just out of complete necessity, right? Like because it's just processing enormous amounts of data. So do you run into those situations more? Like I imagine like you probably have some long running processes that you have to handle on the front end.
Yeah. So you have the notification, right? When you don't just wait to finish. You always give the user feedback too. It's running, it's doing, make sure it's there, and it's how long approximately you need to wait. It's hard to give the estimation based on lots of factors, right? So you have a computing power, you have sharing resource, but still constantly update the progress. It's always very helpful to users.
Yeah. Do you have are you like pinging the back end for like some status of like how long a process has been taking, or like I just like API wise, I'm curious, like if the user is kicking off a process that takes like, let's just say estimated to take 5 minutes, is your backend returning like, this is how long I think it will take? Are you like pinging the backend periodically to see like how it's doing or how far it is along? Like, how do you handle those sorts of situations?
Or WebSockets, maybe?
Yeah, there are two ways, right? One is the polling. So you see, hey, what's the current status? How much I already accomplished? Or the other one, just like a WebSockets, right? You got an event. So you keep updating with the new coming status situation.
Yeah, and when you notify people, do you do it like web push notifications, or you just like put up like a little banner in the corner that just says like, hey, your thing is done, and like maybe a link to see the result or something like that?
Yeah, actually we do both. It depends on the use case. Something is very important for user. We actually have a progress bar right in front of your face, right? See, hey, this is this. Well, you can walk away to go to other page to do it. Some less important, just like you said, put a corner as something. If you want to see it, you can open it, see detail. But it won't take your main real estate area. You can still do other things.
Very cool. I'm looking up your website right now to look at this, because TJ, even more so than me, has used another one called Edge Impulse. And now I'm curious as to what the differences are. Is there like an easy to get started developer or free tier if you want to start playing with this kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think we have the 30 days free trial for the website.
Nice. Very cool. Now I'm just checking out the website.
So you talked about the component library that you're working on, and Storybook and Chromatic. Do you want to talk a little bit about your experience with those tools, like why Storybook, why Chromatic, and like maybe some of the ways that you're using them?
Well, Storybook is always nice. You build components, you want to put it somewhere to show, right? You may not want to show your actual UI, or it's may not even be available. Somebody even building it, right? The backend developer parallel with the front end. So you want something you can see, play, and try, test it. So Storybook is a great tool for that. And every time you have to build a Storybook, right? For developer, maybe it's just one command. So for me, it's nothing. But sometimes I have to show the designer what it is, how it look like. They are not a person to just run a command, even a command line in the console window, right? So I have to build the website for them to see. Chromatic coming very nicely for that. We actually have automatic build. So every time code change, automatic build a new Chromatic, and you have website to see it. Also, the nice thing, it can show the difference, visual difference. So you have the last Storybook at this one, and what have changed, what is, the visual diff. And also you can do all the testing. Unit testing, always a cool thing to catch up issues. So you can have very early stage, right? So catch the problem. So every time when we're pushing a change, so the Chromatic just build a new Storybook and make sure everything work well with the unit test case. So it's a very great tool nowadays, right? You have a lot of tools to help you to build things.
Yeah, and regression testing for those visual differences, I think, is still one of the hardest things for people to solve. I know that I've definitely been in that situation more than once. So that's awesome that Chromatic can actually start to do that, because there still aren't a lot of good solutions for that. So that's very cool.
Yeah, I'm actually curious, has Chromatic worked out good for you? And because as far as I understand, right, and listeners might find this helpful as well, but Chromatic is supposed to be like the automated part of this, right? Like Paige was saying, right? Like my button changed height, was that expected, sort of thing. But I know like I have limited experience with this sort of thing, but I know like the tricky part is like false positives, because like the tool complains the button changed, but it's like, oh, but the button was supposed to change, right? So I'm curious, is like, are false positives a problem for you? Has it like actually found like issues, flag problems? I'm just curious what your experience has been like.
Okay. Actually, I wrote about the Chromatic and Storybook as well in my Medium articles. Yeah. And actually, for the unit test case, it's a fail. It's a serious problem. You have to fix it. It's very obvious. But for the visual difference, they don't stop you. They just show you, like your button change. Okay. Yes, it might be regression. It might be the intended behavior. So they show you a difference. They actually put it like a yellow color, warning color. So you can ignore it or you can go there, review it. So it still needs some human process. You review it, you can accept it or you can reject it.
Ah, cool. So does it like, it's part of like your CI? So like when you did like a PR or something like that, it would just give you like a link where you can, oh, okay. That's pretty cool actually.
Yeah, it is. So you said that when you're using Chromatic, it actually publishes the storybook to, like, does it have its own URL that you can go and check out all the components and see these changes?
Yeah. So for every build, they have a different URL, but they have the virtual one, the final one. It's always a redirect to the latest one. So the other things is not only you can always see the latest one, you can always go back at any version to check what's there at that time. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I could see that being super helpful, not only for the developers, but also for the designers if they're doing like a QA test of some new feature that's being implemented. That's very cool.
Yes. Yeah. We all like it.
How was the integration actually setting it up? Were you building like a new application or was this integrating into an existing app?
It's integrated to existing one. It can be integrated to the CR process too.
Nice.
So looking at just the list of things you've covered, I think we could talk to you for 3 or 4 hours here.
We can talk about React for a whole day.
We can go on it. We can go on just about every topic possible. But so I'm just going to pick out some things at random that I personally find interesting. And you've got an article too about how to excel at coding interviews, like, modern sort of coding interviews. And I think, it's really fun to look at because you go over some things that you wouldn't typically think of, like, hey, Zoom is the normal coding interview platform now, right? Like, so they show up professionally and things like that. So I'm curious what made you want to write about this. And also maybe you could cover some of your tips because we do have a lot of listeners that are looking for jobs all the time. So maybe you could share some of these tips for people that are looking and interviewing in 2022.
Yeah, I think I had some interview experience. That's how I can write this. I actually interviewed, I've been interviewed by other people. I also interview other people through the Zoom. I think Zoom is a very good way, right? So actually it's easy for you. Otherwise, you have to drive into a location. It might be very far. You may lost because GPS never identified exactly which door to get in. You might be getting nervous, right? So with the Zoom, you know it's expected, what to expect at the exact time everything goes on. I think it's very easy for you to run the program. I think one thing to change, I have been go to interview site or interview other people. So a lot of time you go, hey, stand up writing a whiteboard, right? It's hard sometimes after you typing the code so many times on the computer. I think I already lost my handwriting or things. So now it's mostly like you do like a code sandbox. You write it and it's running. It's give you debugger information, all the things. It's like your real development. I think if you actually, it's just like your day-to-day interview, your day-to-day work interview. It's nothing really special. Just you tackle a problem at work. So calm down, don't be nervous. And you use your own laptop. It's a familiar environment, right? It's very cool, Actually, it's more like yourself at the interview. Hopefully you can excel better that way.
It's funny because you said like to drive to interviews, but I remember back in the day, because I'm from Michigan, that I had friends, coworkers that were interested in getting jobs at like the big tech companies out in California and such, and they would fly out there, right? Like because back in the day, like that's the way you did it, right? Which I think those companies still might have those for like, the final interview. They want to see people in person, but I had friends that flew out there for like introductory sort of interviews and stuff. And it's like, man, like the hassle of that is just, it's funny how silly that seems just like 10 years later, right? Because now it's like, it's so easy to just jump on a quick call and do this. And it's it's interesting though, because like you said, that it sort of changes how you prep for this sort of thing, just because the like the process, like what you're going to go through, you're probably not going to be in front of a whiteboard. You'll be on like a virtual, it's an entirely virtual process.
They also, I think, the funniest thing I mentioned, the dress up. You only dress up the top, right? You want to show people. You can even wear pajamas, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, just find your best shirt. Wash your hair, you know, whatever. Shave or makeup or whatever you got to do.
Yes.
Oh, no. That's probably one of my favorite things about being in a fully remote company is that it doesn't matter that I'm wearing shorts on the bottom as long as my top looks okay.
Yeah.
What else have you got in there, TJ?
Well, you also mentioned for interviews some platforms that I had not heard of before, like Leak Code, Geeks for Geeks. Do you want to cover like maybe what some of these things are and why people might find them useful? Because I hadn't heard of these things. Hacker Rank, looks like there's a bunch of them. So I'm curious, like maybe you could introduce some of our listeners to some of these platforms you've maybe seen or used before and why people might be interested in it.
Well, Lead Code and Geeks for Geeks is for preparation. So, well, everything, practice makes perfect. So it's the same for interview too. So right now, you know, most company actually test you, even the front-end engineer, you will be tested with algorithm as well. So you need to pick up the knowledge in college, right? And keep refreshing it, do the algorithm for the best memory usage and the best timing. So it's kind of necessary. You just for beforehand preparation and hack the ring or the other things, right? So that's for the interview process. The hack the ring is say, hey, you go there, you don't even, first round, you don't see a real person, right? So you deal with the virtual environment. So if you're not reach the bar, you're out. So it's also for a company to save the effort. So you have to go there, you know, talk to people at least good enough for the situation. So this is just saves time, right? I have interviewed a lot of people. Sometimes it's a waste time, right? So you talk to people totally irrelevant, right? So waste both people's time, you know. I think it's good to weed out the things people not qualified. And then they also have the website called Carrot. It's a kind of mixture of the human and the automatic environment. So they designate a person to look at you and you just do things in front of them. So they watch you. And after you do it, they ask you question, how you handle this, that. They record the whole process. Then they mail the whole package to a company, let people to review it.
Oh, wow.
That's, gosh.
I will say like that's intimidating, but I can totally see how that would, I could totally see how this would help, right? Because I do things like speak at events and run events all the time. And after having done it for a few years, I worked with a speaking coach for just like an hour or two and had her like review some of my stuff and do some tips in person. And it's amazing what having just an external person look at you, and then also you reflecting on a video of yourself too, which is painful to watch, but you can learn so much from going through the process. So it's hard, but I can totally see the value of that because you can absolutely learn a lot.
Yeah. So we all need to adapt, right? Adapt to a new way of interview after the COVID situation.
Also, I've been looking at Leak Code, and this platform is really, really cool because they give you like problems to solve. And then not only problems to solve, but you have this drop down. You can solve it in like 12 different languages, which is pretty slick. So if you want to just test your language knowledge, or maybe if all you care about is JavaScript, then you can just do these all in JavaScript. And they also rank them from like easy to hard. And the hard ones are intimidating me quite a bit. So.
Oh yeah, some of them are really, really tough. I mean, they'll show you like how your solution stacks up against others in terms of optimization after you've solved it. It's intense and really frustrating at times.
Well, it's fun too, right? After you figure out how to do it, after you reach the high percentile of performance and memory, you feel proud of yourself.
Yeah, it's funny because you can know it's being gamified, but and also know that it totally works, right? Because you do get sucked in of like, okay, well, I got to get a streak going. I want to see if I can get harder ones solved. And so if you're someone that your brain likes that sort of thing, because I know I certainly work that way. Like platforms like this can make it fun. You don't even necessarily know that you're learning stuff about how to solve problems. It can just be a fun way to spend your time and try something out.
Yeah, and especially you have a hard problem that you think about, suddenly you got a great idea, right? You're so excited for that.
Well, Jennifer, you have
awesome.
You do have a ton of articles. Are there any other ones you want to highlight? Like any topics that you think our listeners would really like to hear about? Anything that comes to your mind is something you'd really want to share?
Yeah, actually, in my article, I write about a lot of React, and I use a lot to create a React app. It's very effective. So I thanks for Facebook created this software. It's very useful. You just one command, download it. You have the whole complicated React environment. And I wrote a lot about the different React technology and also experiments like a microfriend. That's another topic I have been used to work on it. So you can have a multiple application running and sharing the same code. It's a complicated task because a lot of companies use that. Since, you have a legacy code and new code, you have acquisition for things. How do you put these things together? It's challenging and exciting too. There are many, many things in technology. Every week I can write something. I can always find an interesting topic to talk about it because there's so many problems to solve. Yes. Sometimes things are hard. I say, it's just so difficult. But after you resolve the issue, I feel so excited. So that's why I write it. I want to share with the people. So, I got a lot of things from my coworkers, from my friends, and from the people online I don't know. Some people even leave comments on my article, give suggestions, or some correct even my grammar error, and some say, hey, this is a better way to do it. It's all about sharing. Right? So we learn together and grow together.
That's fantastic. And that's a great way to approach it. Some people, I think, take that feedback a little bit more personally and are like, well, if you did it this way, it must be wrong, or this is how I would approach it. But it's nice that you take it very gracefully and keep an open mind.
Yeah, that's how you learn, right? Because every one person look at the thing, no matter how good you are, you always look at the limited angle. A second pair of eyes always will see something different.
Good advice.
It's actually, I found a great way to learn, because if you put out what you think in somebody, it's a great way to attract smart people that know that topic really well. So if you look at it that way, right, if you say something wrong and you get the creator of the tool to jump in and talk to you about what you did wrong, well, that's awesome, right? Sometimes there's a popular saying too that the best way to get help on a technology is find like the forum that people go to and say something very wrong, because if you do that, like it's almost like puts out a signal for everybody that likes or uses that technology. They'll just like jump in and all of a sudden they'll answer any questions you have, right? Because so it can be a great way to just learn in that sense, because you attract if you write about something, you attract people that know it to either say good job or comment or give you feedback, but all of that means you're learning throughout the process.
Yeah. Actually, I'm also taking some class from Coursera. So actually, I'm currently listening to a class about creativity. One thing about creativity, just you need to talk to people very different from you. Hear the voice you usually don't hear. They can inspire your creativity.
That's great advice.
And a great way to do that is to listen to podcasts, right? Like this.
Yes.
Just like this one. Exactly.
Yes.
Well, Jennifer, it has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. If people want to get in contact with you, what's the best way to reach you on the internet?
Well, on the Medium, I give my LinkedIn the profile ID. They can click and reach me.
Awesome.
Hi, this is Charles Max Wood from Top End Devs, and lately I've been coaching some people on starting some podcasts and in some cases just taking their career to the next level. Whether you're beginner going to intermediate going to advanced, whether you're trying to get noticed in the community or go freelance, I've been helping these folks figure out how to get in front of people, how to build relationships, and how to build their careers and max out and just go to the next level. So if you're interested in talking to me and having me help you go to the next level, go to topenddevs.com/coaching. I will give you a 1-hour free session where we can figure out what you're trying to do, where you're trying to go, and figure out what the next steps are. And then from there, we can figure out how to get you to the place you want to go. So once again, that's topenddevs.com/coaching.
Well, I think that this is the section of the show where we move into picks. So TJ, would you like to start us off with a pick for this week?
Yeah, so I'm going to pick, this will be a sharp pivot from our chat, but I'm going to pick Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. This is just a game that's coming out. Actually, I'm picking it before it's released, which is also a very dangerous thing to do, but it's like basically a remake of the Turtles, like arcade games that were popular when I was a kid. So for me, this is like a big nostalgia thing because these are the games I remember playing in arcades when I was young. And somebody saw a smart opportunity that's like, hey, we can make a console version of this because it's going to be a Switch game, a PlayStation game, an Xbox game. And what's cool about it is it's a 6-player co-op game. So you can have up to 6 people playing. So that's cool for me because I can have like my friends, my kids play with me. So I'm pumped about it. I'm going to be playing it the first day it comes out. So if you,
Nice.
I think it's probably only for people that also see this as nostalgic, right? If you played these games as a kid, this is a game made for you. So that is my pick.
Nice. So I will say that my pick for this week is going to be, I may have already picked this in the past at some point, but it's been a while. So I'm going to pick the Great British Bake Off on Netflix. And there's probably like 10 or 11 seasons of it. And I've just been watching the last 3 or 4 seasons just over because I've mostly forgotten what these people baked the first time around. And it makes me, it is so inspiring to see the stuff that they can make in a day or half a day and really makes me want to become a better baker. And it's just like enough drama that it's exciting, but not so much that I'm just completely worn out because there are plenty of days after work where I just cannot take that much. So if you're looking for something that is really cool and really gives you a much greater appreciation for what you can buy at your local bakery or in your local grocery store, I would definitely say check it out. Maybe you'll be inspired to become a patisserie chef after you watch some of this stuff.
It's cool, yeah.
It is. So Jennifer, do you have a pick for our listeners?
Yeah, my pick is the Baltimore Museum of Art. I pick it because I just visited a few weeks ago. It's a pretty large scale, very nice collection. It's located in Johns Hopkins. And it featured a lot of the Henry Matisse work. It also has a Picasso, Van Gogh, all those big names you can imagine. Mm-hmm. And it also has a modern art exhibition somewhere. It has a monitor on the wall. The display there, you can even sit on the floor watching it. It's a movie. It's kind of video things. It's art. Then I think, wow, I pictured, right? Use Three.js to create something and show up there. It's a visual art. And someday it may be there. I'm dreaming about it. It's cool.
You never know.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, as more things move digital, right? Like, why not have like some sort of virtual display, right? Because it's still art.
And
Absolutely.
also it's a modern art, right? It has a color, space. And that's what the 3.js is good at it. And I sometimes use a draw. You set some parameters, something just like a modern art. It's just so fresh, it's so cool, so creative, you know?
Awesome. That sounds like a great one to visit.
Yes.
Well, thank you for joining us today, and thank everybody for listening. We will see you on the next episode of React Roundup.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a great fun to share everything with everybody.
Absolutely.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.